All right, this is the rest of chapter 2. I'm going to go through the first 10 slides really fast because we've talked about those. You can always slow the recording down or play it again. Uh, so we're going to talk about chemistry and things in chapter 2. So here we go. And I'll focus on organic molecules. So in this chapter, they talked about properties of life, that living organisms grow, they respond to their environment, they do homeostasis, they're organized by cells, things like that. Um, Several of these properties are really important. One is that they have a particular chemistry, we're going to go into that. Chemistry is kind of the smallest level of organization at atoms and molecules. To understand what happens at higher levels of organization, sometimes we have to dip down into chemistry. So, chemistry then is the study of matter. Matter is any material, a solid, liquid, or a gas. Thousands and thousands of different types of materials. Most are compounds. That means they're composed of multiple different types of particles that stick together. And the quality of these properties can vary. But if we separate compounds into their individual components, we find that there are only about 92 elements, and these 92 elements, or 98 naturally occurring elements according to our textbook, are made of atoms. And all atoms are made of the same three subatomic particles, they just have different amounts. Protons are positively charged, and in the center of the atom, neutrons are neutral, also heavy, and also in the center of the atom. And electrons are negatively charged and much smaller and in orbitals moving around the atoms. The number of protons determines the characteristics or what type of atom it is. The number of electrons determines its chemical reactivity, what it will react with, and charge. Chemical bonds occur when atoms share or exchange electrons with their other atoms. Okay, the electrons they exchange are the outermost ones called the valence electrons. And sometimes to get a stable of arrangement of electrons, it's better to do that than to have a neutral charge. And so sometimes atoms get rid of an electron or they gain an electron to fill an orbital. When they do this, they become ions, charged atoms. Um, and these oppositely charged atoms, positive ions and negative ions, are attracted to one another and form compounds that are ionic bonded together. Other times, atoms share electrons, and these electron pairs then orbit both the two different atoms that are in this compound. So neither molecule is charged, but the atoms are held together because the electrons are orbiting two nuclei or centers of the atom. And so there's no net charge to the molecule, but sometimes there's a charge to a region. Okay, and so these things act like little magnets. They have a positive pole and a negative pole, and so the atom is neutral, but there's a positive region and a negative region. Water is a molecule like this, where it has a positive part where the atoms have fewer electrons and a negative part where the atom has more electrons. And this causes water molecules to kind of stick together. So it gives them their unusual properties. Okay, we're not going to do chemical equations or anything like that, but we will talk about different types of atoms. So carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. You'll see me use those symbols. And I'll talk a lot about chemical bonds and water. Okay, but mostly we're going to talk about organic molecules. These are large molecules made up of many atoms that form very complex structures. Usually they're mostly covalently bonded together. And there are four types: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. The four types have really important features and they're used in organisms in all cells. They're the most abundant functional molecules in cells. So carbohydrates, these are molecules that have as their building blocks sugars. Uh, like glucose or fructose or galactose or something like that. And there can be just one sugar, a simple sugar like in a monosaccharide, or multiples linked together. So they can form long chains of sugars. Monosaccharides are the simplest carbohydrates. These here, I think they show the chemical structure. They have usually 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen. The types there: fructose, glucose, galactose. They have the same chemical formula, but a slightly different shape or configuration. Okay, and these are important. They taste sweet. They're found in lots of foods. We use them in our body. Sometimes they can link 2 sugars together, and these can be used for transport or storage. Sucrose, table sugar, is an example of a disaccharide. So is lactose and maltose. They're a little harder for us to digest, but they're still common. And then polysaccharides are long chains of simple sugars, monosaccharides. They're used for energy storage, like in plants or in people. Okay, or sometimes in plants they can be for structural support. Cellulose is a important polysaccharide. All right, the next group are the lipids. These are the fats and oils. They are mostly carbon and hydrogen. There's a couple unusual types. Phospholipids are important in cells. Lipids are used for energy storage, for structure, for regulation and protection. So these are long carbon-hydrogen chains that don't dissolve in water very well. Lots of carbon, lots of hydrogen, not very ionic, not very polar at all. So usually these are oily, kind of greasy type compounds: fats, oils, waxes, but also some smaller ones, steroids. In our body we have triglycerides, that's body fat. That's a glycerol and 3 fatty acids, long carbon chains. They can be varied in shape and structure. They can be straight, then they're saturated, referred to as saturated fats, or bent, then they're unsaturated. Plants tend to have unsaturated fats. And then all organisms have phospholipids. These have a glycerol head with a phosphate group that's polar, and then fatty acid chains. And they tend to form cell membranes. So plant cells and animal cells have these. And then some molecules that are lipids are regulatory. Like in our body, we have sex hormones: testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. These are all lipids. Plants use some lipids for steroids. These are signal molecules. Okay, then the third big group of organic molecules are the proteins, and they're composed of building blocks called amino acids. There are 20 different amino acid building blocks in proteins. They all contain a nitrogen group and a carboxyl group, or an acid group. We can link them together in a peptide bond, which happens between the acid group and the nitrogen group. And then these can form long chains that can fold. Okay, polymers, proteins are all polymers of amino acids. Each amino acid has this basic structure with a central carbon, nitrogen on one side, amino acid on the other. And they only vary with this R group. Okay, that's where they happen. So it's just a long chain of these. These chains then are long links of amino acids that fold up into pleats and whorls and things like that, and they form complex 3-dimensional shapes. These shapes are used for lots of things, like enzymes to promote chemical reactions, defense molecules, transport molecules, support molecules, molecules for motion or regulation or storage. They're really, really important. Most functional molecules are proteins. Okay, and then the last group of organic molecules are the nucleic acids. These too are made of building blocks, but only 4 different types of nucleotides. Each nucleotide has a phosphate and a sugar, and then one of 4 bases. Okay, the sugar differs between the 2 types of nucleic acid. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA is ribonucleic acid. So just slightly different sugars. These are involved in heredity and protein production. Okay, nucleic acids then are long chains of nucleotides. Okay, these chains are used to store information in the sequence of nucleotides. And so here you see the chain has a sugar phosphate backbone, and then the nucleotides are exposed. In DNA, the nucleotides are adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. In RNA, thymine is replaced by uracil. So the sequence of bases in DNA encodes information needed to make a protein. The double helix can be unwound. It's only held together by hydrogen bonds. And the bases are complementary, so if you know one side, you know the other. And then enzymes can be used to make RNA from DNA. And it contains ribose instead of deoxyribose and uracil instead of thymine. It's a single nucleotide strand, and it uses the information in DNA to then help make a protein. I think I'll stop there, and we'll talk about the last little bit in class next week. And we'll talk about an application of DNA, RNA, and proteins.